Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network. These are the three most iconic children's networks of all time. It's safe to assume that most of us grew up with at least one of these channels at some point in our childhood. Chances are, we all have connected with these channels in one way or another. After all, they didn't entertain us for nothing.
Okay, I guess just this once I can do it for nothing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, I guess I can do one more for nothing. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
What was it that made us kids so eager to turn on the TV every morning? Why are these networks so identifiable to us, and possibly even to people who didn't grow up with them? Mascots. All three of these companies had decades to create their own identities for their networks, yet only two of them have mascots. Both of those mascots being major household names that us fans can recognize, our parents can recognize, and even our grandparents can recognize. Yet Cartoon Network doesn't have a definitive mascot. There's not a single character that everyone can agree is the true mascot of Cartoon Network. After 32 years of the network, the many characters and the vastly different decades and era that the network has been through, who is Cartoon Network's mascot? Well, in order to find out who would be the best candidate, I'm going to go through every decade and picking one character from each era. Once we have 3 characters, I will be crowning one as the unofficial mascot of Cartoon Network. But I won't have the last say, because I will have a community poll up live and I want you guys to vote on who you believe the true Cartoon Network mascot is.
We're talking Toon here!
Cartoon Network was created on October 1st of 1992 and didn't really have much to offer right out the gate. The network was just a baby and was trying to use older cartoons to get off the ground before officially establishing themselves. At the time, the network would consist of the Flintstones, Tom and Jerry, Manila Gorilla, and Looney Tunes reruns along with other lesser-known cartoons. But as the network would start to grow and find its own footing, these older shows would instead get pushed to their own programming block. That's where we get Boomerang, and with them out of the way, we can make room for the new cartoons that were about to start taking over the schedule. But the first official show being the Moxie Show.
Hi, I'm Moxie, and, that's Fleet, and,
which would be Cartoon Network's first attempt at actually establishing a mascot. Speaking in between commercials and commentating on older cartoons, even sometimes doing live calls with people at home. And it was a valid effort, but despite being the first original Cartoon Network series, Moxie failed to catch on with audiences. And as a result, Cartoon Network would euthanize that puppy and shy away from the network having a face. At least for the moment being. But after the network went through the next 3 years of existing, they'd finally find their own footings with Dexter's Laboratory on April 27th of 1996.
Look, there goes Dexter, and there goes his sister Dee Dee. Oh boy, wonder what they're gonna get into today.
The argument for Dexter being the mascot of the network is actually a really good argument, considering the fact that he was the network's first taste of true success at the time. Cartoon Network seemingly had been positioning him to be the face, canceling the Moxie Show just 1 month after Dexter's debut. Dexter was treated like the network's first true franchise instead of just a show that they played. They pumped out action figures, video games, fast food tie-ins, and Dexter was the first character to have his own run of comics for the network that ran for a total of 34 issues. Before, Cartoon Network would cancel it and make his next appearance be the other cartoons laughing at him because of it. The network believed in the character, at least for the moment being. So why didn't Dexter stick? Well, competition. Take a look at how SpongeBob would strike success when it came out. Nickelodeon had the Rugrats running the world by storm. They were everywhere, shows, spin-offs, talk shows. They were even the first non-Disney animated movie to make $100 million at the box office. You could argue that the Rugrats were in the same position as Dexter, but to a far higher degree. It was starting to look like it would stay that way, until Nickelodeon had a schedule conflict and their new series creator decided to leave the network, forcing them to greenlight this little unknown Spongy Boy cartoon.
I like square butts and I cannot lie.
And once it released, it completely overshadowed the Rugrats. This wasn't a both-and situation. The Rugrats were getting replaced in real time. The toys changing on the shelves, and all the attention was being pointed towards the sponge. The Rugrats, just like Dexter, were never able to fully recover. Dexter would face slight competition for the next 2 years with Johnny Bravo, who was way too horny to be the mascot of a children's network. Want them next to your children?
Yes.
Cow and Chicken never really stood a chance, and neither did I Am Weasel. No, the real competition would come on November 18th of 1998. Powerpuff Girls, who wouldn't completely overshadow Dexter, but would slowly but surely become the network's favorite child. The network would roll out the red carpet for these 3 test tube babies. Thing Dexter got, the Powerpuff Girls got, and more. 6 seasons compared to Dexter's 4, a theatrical movie, 2 anniversary specials, video games, reboots, fast food tie-ins with Dragon Ball Z, their own anime. They'd even get the same comic book treatment as Dexter, but instead of 34 issues, their comic would run for 70. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And similar to SpongeBob, there wasn't much competition for the girls. Even Ed, Edd and Eddy, who would premiere in 1999, couldn't dethrone the girls, despite the fact that it's a really freaking good show. In fact, the only thing that could actually dethrone the Powerpuff Girls was, unfortunately, the Powerpuff Girls themselves. Remember how I mentioned the fact that the Rugrats were the first non-Disney animated movie to make over $100 million at the box office? Well, Cartoon Network truly believed these girls were their ticket to the same type of success, so on July 3rd of 2002, they would try to replicate it with the Powerpuff Girls movie. Super original title, guys. But for reasons that probably deserve their own video one day, the movie would make nowhere near what the Rugrats movie did, only making $16 million at the box office. I can only assume this made Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network's investors panic. They had to completely rethink the Powerpuff Girls and their success. Losing millions on a movie based on your biggest franchise is worrying, to say the least. So the network would pull back on the Powerpuff Girls, canceling many projects including a Powerpuff Girls episode that I recently made a video on. As they move into the new millennium, the network would want a fresh start and some new faces. The network had learned their lesson from the mistakes they made before and wouldn't push for one single show as hard as they did before. The Eds were very popular for a while, even becoming the network's longest running series at one point. Like Billy and Mandy and Codename Kids Next Door were given their time to shine, with Billy and Mandy getting multiple video games and 2 TV movies. Samurai Jack having a pretty decent fan base and got some video game treatment from the network as well. Other shows like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and The Life and Times of Juniper Lee were fun, but didn't have the network backing them as much. Things were starting to really settle down for the network. Until just 2 days after Christmas in the year 2005, the network would find their next contender.
Ben Tennyson is your typical 10-year-old kid, except for the ability to transform into 10 different superheroes.
Ben 10 would release and grab the attention of most of the boy demographic of the channel, and was a big hit because of it. Ben was starting to look like he could become the new face of the channel. The network was making huge bucks, and Ben 10 action figures were making a lot of money. And they were slowly but surely starting to become more confident in Ben 10 as a brand. So confident that they'd make 2, count them, 2 live-action Ben 10 movies. Still made for TV, of course. They were confident, but not that confident. And this new show, Chowder, was starting to sneak his head into the race. But before his potential could truly be shown, Cartoon Network would make the biggest mistake of the company's career.
Real kids doing real stuff in real situations. Wednesday nights on CN Real.
What's your name?
8 o'clock, Wednesday nights, CN Real on Cartoon Network.
Cartoon Network decided to derail the success of the cartoons they had running and replaced them all with live-action shows, none of which belonged on Cartoon Network. This move killed any chance Chowder had of becoming the face of the company. But luckily Ben 10 was still holding on, making Ben the face of the company for the time being. But as the network was starting to get out of this phase, like every hipster white girl that tattooed a mustache on their finger in 2010, a new phase would begin. Out of the sky came a boy and his dog that the world didn't know that they needed. Adventure Time would release on April 5th of 2010. And while the network probably thought it would be successful, they had no clue how successful it would be. Fans absolutely loved it. It was the perfect cartoon to pull us out of the era that was before. So, Cartoon Network would take baby steps and try to recover from what came before, still unsure if they wanted to put all their eggs into one single basket. They wouldn't do any TV movies or anything like that right away, but they would give us a few video games and tested the waters with a few toys. Weirdly enough, it started to seem like Adventure Time's fans were willing to support it in any way possible, but the network was too afraid to give in. I guess they didn't want to risk another Powerpuff Girls movie situation, so we wouldn't get much official merchandise for Adventure Time. At least not as much as the shows before.
Mordecai! Mordecai!
Margaret! Margaret!
Mordecai!
Margaret! Margaret!
The fans for these shows were starting to get more passionate about the future of the network, and the network was finally starting to show a few faint signs of faith in their shows, but still not nearly as much as before. Their show got games and a movie and a little merchandising, but that will be all despite its success. Then the network would find its next mascot contender in Steven Universe, created by Rebecca Sugar. Steven Universe came out at the perfect time. Story-driven series with the mystery element that started to take off at the boom of YouTube's theory videos only boosted its popularity even higher. People couldn't get enough of Steven Universe, and the network took notice. We got a movie, a spin-off, a video game, and that's about it, surprisingly. The network still didn't feel comfortable enough to put the money into making toys for the series, so this pattern would continue for the network. And with Adventure Time getting spin-offs and sequel series till this very day, I'd have to say that Finn was the face of the network in the 2010s. That leaves us with 3 potential mascots: the Powerpuff Girls, Ben 10, and Finn and Jake. To be completely honest, I don't think it could truly be Ben 10. Ben 10 is a franchise that mostly leans toward the male demographic. Not to say that women didn't enjoy it, because there were plenty who did, but it did not have a broad enough appeal to be the face of the whole network. That leaves us with the Powerpuff Girls and Finn and Jake. When I look at which franchise has left a lasting effect on the channel and are still associated with it till this day, then I'd say the character with the most potential to be the channel's mascots are the Powerpuff Girls. Adventure Time will forever have a lasting effect on the channel, and it's a story that is still being told to this day. But that story is not Finn and Jake's story. Their story ended, and is no longer about them. It's about Fiona and Cake, or Bubblegum and Marceline. But the Powerpuff Girls have always been in the forefront. They never truly left the channel. When the show ended, another version of it began. Then we got specials well into 2010s, followed by the reboot series, which was the only show that the network had shown any faith in. Them immediately advertising toys, mobile games, shirts, and all sorts of different merchandise. The network still believes in these girls despite their rough history, so I truly believe them to be the true face of Cartoon Network. To be honest, while I was writing this video and going through promos and such, I started to realize something. The network doesn't really need a mascot. It doesn't need a face. Cartoon Network, unlike any of the other networks, built a catalog of cartoons that genuinely feel like a community. They aren't going head to head and trying to overshadow each other. These cartoons and the creators who made them all have a respect for the other's work, for the network, and a want to contribute something that does right by it. Cartoon Network had created a community of amazing cartoons and creators who wanted to add on to the history of the network and their past cartoons, not replace them. And that's why the network stands out to me so much. So whether the poll says Ben 10 is the face of the network, or Finn and Jake, or even if it says the Powerpuff Girls, all the network's characters, old and new, are an important part of an important network.
Tommy?
I'm keeping an eye out for Cupid.
Right, we're celebrating Valentine's Day on the next Fridays.
The Love Fest gets underway with a brand new episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends at 7.
And then stick around for even more love with Camp Laszlo, Juniper Lee, and much, much more.
It's a brand new episode of Fridays.
Tonight at 7.
On Cartoon Network.
Huh? Is it over? Dude, that was so cheesy.